It is 9 o'clock, so we will go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and we will, as always, start with our roll call.
All right, Frank Williams.
Here.
Mike Forte.
Here.
Bill Miller.
Here.
Jeff Weinkoff.
Here.
Laverne Coleman.
Here.
Scott Floyd. Terry Mann.
Here.
Gary Keaton.
Here.
Jerry Groves. Hugh Kennedy.
I don't want to silence.
Frank Braxton. William Ravenbard.
Here.
Landon Zimmer. Do have quorum.
Thank you, and let the record reflect, we have an excellent ringtone on the right side of the table for this. Columbus County has been heard. We'll now do our invocation and pledge of allegiance, which ironically is going to be led by Mr. Coleman.
Let's stand. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for the mercy and grace you showed us. I pray that you'll give us the wisdom and the knowledge to do what we need to do, to carry on your work and the work of the state and the county that we represent today. Pray for mercy, grace, and forgiveness. For us all in the name of your Son, Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Now read the ethics, awareness, and conflict of interest statement that we're required to read aloud at the beginning of every meeting. In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every committee member to avoid conflicts of interest. Does any committee member have any known conflict of interest with respect to any matters coming before the committee today? If so, please identify the conflict and refrain from any participation in the matter involved. Anyone have any known conflicts? And as always, if you see something when we get to it, just bring it up at that point. Any additions or corrections to the agenda? Sam, anything you need us to change?
No, sir.
Anybody else have any changes, or do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Forte, second by Commissioner Coleman. Any discussion? Seeing none, we don't have to do roll call votes anymore, do we?
Everybody that's voting today is in person, so.
So, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And if that changes there during the meeting, we'll do roll call.
Yep.
Next item is approval of the minutes, which are included in the packet. Does anyone have any changes from this, or do we have a motion?
So move.
Motion to approve. There's a second. That's motion by Mayor Mann, second by Mr. Miller. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is public comments. So do we have anyone online first that wants to make a public comment? And we have a second item later for RPO liaison comments. So if you're a liaison, speak then instead of in public. Anyone in the room wishing to make public comments? And did we receive any by email or anything?
No, sir.
Okay. We do have a couple of our community liaisons with us. Do either of y'all have any comments? Any online? Okay. We'll move on to presentation, and our one presentation today is a demonstration of NCDOT's Projects Near Me app. I guess this is mobile app, correct, or is it a web page?
It's a web page.
Okay.
Yes, it's a web application.
Over to Eric for that.
Thank you. I just sent over to share. It's I asked the request to share. There you go. All right, good morning, everyone. Morning. My name is Eric Ritzel. I'm the Corridor Development Engineer for Division 3. We work in our planning department for the division. We work alongside KPRPO and the rest of our 6 MPOs and RPOs throughout our 6-county boundary. We provide regular updates throughout our packet information that we give monthly to a lot of, monthly or dependent upon these schedules happen. But in those packets that we meet with our TCCs, TACs, and committees, we provide information on projects that are in construction, development, as well as resurfacing and preservation. Alongside that information that's pretty standard, we include some additional information that are extra resource material for the public to use or new things that the department's putting out. In June's packet information, we had put together a highlight of projects near me, which was an application that was sent out in the spring by DOT statewide. It was noted as consideration to the public as beta. It was a beta version, which means it's not to its full extent in application, its use. And they're still working through that period even to today. But that was developed with NCDOT's IT. They had IT analyst support, contractors, and IT oversight for this application we put together. We had presented on this with WMPO, and we talked with Sam a number of times, and we thought it'd be good to kind of give a heads up for everyone in KPRPO's meeting. So to start on the background here, to look at a purpose for this project or this application specifically is we want to develop more transparency from the department. And we also want to make information easier accessible to the public. Historically, project information has existed across many different platforms that are accessible to the public. However, some access is there. They might not be as easy to locate or to understand for public members. So Projects Near Me brought that information together in a single map-based interface where it can quickly identify projects that are occurring in their community or anyone's travel routes. One statement that was shared to me with the development team was if anyone was traveling throughout North Carolina's roads and they saw traffic control devices, their hope would be that there be a corresponding project pin to that ongoing work, and that someone could go to that application, pick the pin on the map, and understand any concerns or development staging milestones that they would be interested to know. So on the screen here, we have the basic windows that you'd see on the application. There's the map. I'm going to start from left to right. The map application itself that's users can go through. There's the filtering process, which is going to be on the left-hand side of the screen when you open the application. Project details, when you click a pin, those are the project details you'll see for a project. And then the settings, and the settings help manipulate the data, what it's bringing in the application, what the application is trying to load at that time. But simply put, Projects Near Me is a tool that displays transportation projects across North Carolina in an interactive map. Users can search projects by location, county. They can look up by project number. They can view information that are related to those projects. The intent is to answer a lot of questions that someone might have, such as what is this project? What phase is this project in? Where can I find additional information on this project? Who and where can I contact directly to get more information on a stated concern of mine or question I might have? So a key idea was this as a visualization layer. It was user-friendly. It's automatically updated. It's not a dated management system. And I think in order to understand that better, it was important to understand what the application is not. So it is not a it's not a project management system. It's not a new database. It's not a tool where users manually enter project information. The information is not necessarily new either. It's been out there. It's been out there for the public to access. It just simply puts that information in a more public-friendly way. For example, there are other applications that the DOT does put out, such as Drive-NC or TIMS, and those provide real-time updates to driving conditions, whereas this application is working more so on the development side and things that are contracted out and planned in advance. So where did they get this information from? There's a total of 9 different listed data sets that the department had, the development group had shared with me that they said they get their information from. The first one being the STIP, which is a GIS data set. They have high profile projects on a SharePoint list that they manage. There's a CPL and SAP data, which is another tracking for active projects and funding. SAP, ICAMS, GIS data. There's congestion progress reports that they pull information from, safety projects, mobility projects, active construction projects, as well as public involvement pages. The idea with this slide is to kind of overwhelm the public on it. This is what people see. So it helps organize all of that information in a more manageable data set, and it transports that into the mapping application itself. So it's a way of showing everyone that it might not be easily as manageable if there's one project that we have consideration for, but this is to a great stepping stone of all of this information can now be accessible into one application. So one key point that I like to just reference is there are some projects that we've noted that are not in the application itself. I think it's important to jump back again to what the main goal was. The goal was to provide this information to the public that automatically updates. And because it pulls information in from multiple systems from NCDOT data sets, there is a lot of gaps that they've noticed. In those gaps, for example, majority of projects that do not show up happen to be a primary issue with the GIS coordinates that are imported with the data sets that the project gets tracked through. So in some cases, there might not have that GIS coordination to link to the project, which therefore it won't show up in the map application. In other cases, there are archive projects. Archive projects, they get removed. There can be closed out projects and they get removed as well. There's situations where projects are still active, but they're tied to systems and contracts that do not support public-facing geospatial data. And that's that means just for what we might not see. So I have on the screen here an example of HE0018. It's in New Hanover County. That project is in development. It appears on our CPO. It appears on our NC Connect and other internal planning tools, but it did not appear on the map application. So we had reached out with the IT department. We told them about this issue. And since then, we've actually had the project added. So they just had to work with the management sets for the original data in order to get that line work to show up on the application itself. So this one is now on there. In the past couple months, we've had some information and updates from them generally, and they said they've added about 60 additional projects statewide. So that's great that they're still working on these things. Later in the presentation, I'll have some contacts, not only myself, but the development team, if anyone have any questions that want to ask any concerns, or if you happen to see a project that we didn't catch that didn't get added so far. So with that, there's a QR code link that's on the screen. I believe you printed these out. I don't know if you had it in your packet information that was.
These slides aren't printed yet, but they'll be available after.
Well, we've already supplied Sam with the slides, so if you need access to the QR code, you can either ask myself or Sam, and we can get you that. If anyone would like to play along at home, feel free to scan the link or scan the QR code, and also just go on Google search and just type in NCDOT projects for me. It's a very simple search. I'll leave it up for a minute as I see some people are still
trying to not cooperate today.
And so just as I kind of preface this as we go into the application, and I hope mine is loaded. I'm on my hotspot right now, broadcasting this. So I'm a little worried with my connection if it's going to load in that well. But the application, when you first get into it, will generally load to, when I've opened it for the first time, to the central Raleigh area of North Carolina. And then I try to navigate from there going towards Division 3. As soon as the Zoom updates on the screen, I wonder if I have to, yeah, I know, I think I wonder if I should switch that. I'll do that. Should flip over. Okay, so this is what the application will look like. I do recommend using it on your laptop. You can use it through a browser system on your phone as well. It just tries to load in a lot of information. So when you first get in there, just try to navigate it slowly, let it load, let it bring in all that information that's trying to load in there. I recommend to either filter by the county or division to narrow that information down. Otherwise, it tries to load all the projects throughout the state if you don't have those initial filters. That's on the left side of the screen. That was that toolbar here. I don't know if you can see my mouse moving around. And so from there, I'd like to just showcase some of the main applications that we see. Obviously, the map itself is interactive. So I'm just kind of scrolling around with my mouse. You can zoom in. I highly recommend to zoom in initially. You'll see right now it's loading. This is what I'm seeing on the same on my screen here. So I'm using a hotspot right now, which is probably why it's loading in very slowly. But it does take a lot of information to be put together in order for that full application to work. I hope this updates. So that's one application of it, is the map feature itself. You'll see the pins that are on here. There's some filtering options as well on the left for modes of transportation or modes of work that we're under contracts currently. They're not the traditional 6 modes of transportation that we work with Spot on, because there's some random projects that don't quite fit that narrative as well for this application's use. They also have data indicators. Those data indicators are linked to systems of access for the public, and you'll see that on the bottom of the screen, there's a yellow pin, blue pin, and a pinkish magenta. And I was gonna start with a project that we all know very well because it fits all of those indicators. I cannot get even the pin to show up.
Eric, if you want me to switch over.
Yeah, do you want to do that? And then I'll just kind of point you in the direction of where to go. How do I stop sharing? Stop share. So I was going to start with the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge, because that has all of the pins associated to it. So you'll see that it has a high profile project pin link. It has a noted as in development, as well as a public engagement information. When you open the project window itself, like Sam has on there now, all he did was just click the actual associated pin for that project to get to that project window. You can see it's noted as a bridge project that's under there. You'll see there's the description of the project. There's anticipated milestones. If you scroll down a little bit, Sam, there's also a local map. That was the first thing that was on there. The local map feature is kind of nice because it does show property lines, so parcel lines that are associated where the project might lie. So you can use that local map for as a quick reference if you're trying to see how something might line up in terms of a property, if you're affected by it in some way. There's also additional information, such as when you scroll down, we have those milestones. Being that this project's in development, it's going to note that there's right-of-way work and then contract bidding approaching. Those aren't milestones that are completed. On the left side, you'll see a check mark eventually as we show some other projects that shows a completion. Obviously, the date itself associates that work is going to happen in the future as well. Contact information for this project specifically, they have DOT contacts for our project development, that engagement hub link. So that's a public access where people can submit questions, concerns, see updates to the project. And then there's a planning organization associated for where that project lies. This one happens to be in Wilmington's MPO, but I wanted to highlight it because it has all of the attributes, and I know everybody knows about this project in this room. So that's the first one. The next project I'd like to show is the R5900 in Surf City. That's NC 210 and NC 50, Owen Ave and Belt Road. To go a little closer here for Cape Fear RPO's region, you'll see again, it has that project description, current development status, anticipated milestones, NC DOT contacts. And now if we scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see that Sam is listed with the Cape Fear RPO contact. So it's a similar resource in this sense, but we're in a project again that has development timelines associated to it. It has a different project manager for the DOT that's on there, and obviously a quick description. There is a yellow indicator. I think you have them turned off right now for this one. Maybe if you have those back on. I thought it was yellow. No, wrong. There's a few indicators with this one, as you can just see, I guess, in contrast to what we saw in Cape Fear Memorial Bridge there. So the next project I'd like to show is NC 211 in Brunswick County, the widening R5021. This is the yellow indicator. That's where I put my note wrong. Okay. So on here, in comparison to the other projects we just showed that are under development, this one's active under construction. It's a high profile project, that's just where it's pulling in data from, which is why it's associated to that pin, that yellow. If we look at this, it's going to be the same exact breakdown under the description for projects that are under construction. They do provide the % completion update, which is pretty great. It's a quick link. It has every single project under construction that I've seen so far. It has that updated. And then you'll start to see that those check marks, because this project has gone into construction, they've completed their awarded contract and they've completed the beginning of work. So now they have a completion date for the work completed in the horizon. So contact information changes here as well. So it's going to go to our resident engineer's office. They have a link, they have a name associated for the contractors, the project page, and then again, the region connect to planning organization, the same. And then lastly, just as a quick one to show a little different from these projects is in Southport, we have the EB 5982, which is the bicycle and pedestrian project. That project is a little different than these because it's a lot smaller of a project. You know, we're looking at projects that are multi-million-dollar projects as something that might not be as impactful for somebody statewide, but they still broadcast these types of projects. So it's just important. This is in development right now, and it again changes the attributes slightly as we go down, but it stays similar to the format. There are some filtering processes. If you'd like to learn some more information, I'd be happy to talk with you about in order to navigate the map a little easier. But basically, those are the main, that's the main information that I wanted to showcase today in terms of the demonstration to everyone. I won't jump back to my slides just for the sake of time, but I do have that information available if you want to contact me directly. Again, my name is Eric Ritzel. There's contact back through the development team I can get you in touch with, or I'd be able to ask them on your behalf as well. They're continuing to work on things right now, and it's been a great stepping stone for the state to have this application available and all this information for the public.
And if you're willing to take a few questions now as well.
Definitely, yeah.
I have a couple. At what point does a project show up in here? Is it when it's in development or is it when it begins construction? When does a project appear on the map?
It would have to be linked to the data set that it's pulling from. So that it's dependent upon the project itself. Sometimes projects will have multiple associations to different data sets. One might come up first. It just depends on when that project gets imported.
So
I
it
guess-
is including projects in development.
Yeah,
Okay, it'll say in development on there. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
but when you click on that project, it'll say what phase it's in.
But then I know you mentioned that when a project's closed, I think you mentioned when a project is closed out, it may no longer appear. I'm assuming
Yeah.
that would make sense. Yeah. Yeah.
and that's a big part to like, people might say, well, why isn't this project showing up? Because that's like that self-management, sometimes as we get to the end of a project, I feel like the public might not be as, where's that project at? But we have to make sure we close those things out appropriately.
And once it's closed out, you could, if you didn't take it off, it'd be so cluttered you couldn't find it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Other question, I know this is obviously a starting point and a work in progress, but then does the development team have plans to make a more mobile friendly version down the road?
I asked them that. So they had issues in the past with having, it was management of mobile apps is a lot more difficult, and then IT oversight does not work well with mobile apps.
I'm not even talking about a mobile app, a more mobile friendly version of the actual web link, because I tried to look at it on the phone and you're right, it's gonna be better on a laptop.
Definitely. I asked them about that. They said that would be something down the road that they would talk about as a more user friendly, the way I envision it. I know it's not perfect to say this, but people are driving, you don't want to be on your phone, but you could easily access that information on your phone if something you had happened to, if something was in the road, whatever it might be, but.
I just know a lot of people are probably like me. When I travel, I don't even take a laptop.
Yeah.
It's this or this.
Yeah,
And,
I'm right there with you.
and, it's especially like Rotary of all things has a club locator app where you can hit and it ties into your GPS and it pulls up a club within 40 miles of your current location. Now, granted, that's a whole lot less complex than this.
I think it comes down to the data
Yeah.
and that then, like he said, there's 9 data sets that
Yeah.
are feeding in across the state. And I think because of the complexity of the data, it's just super challenging to make it mobile friendly. But I mean, hopefully they'll get to that point. I just don't think we're there.
Yeah. It would be good. The one thing I would say, if there's one thing they could put in mobile, and I don't know if this map's pulled from Google Maps or if it's in-house, but if there's a way that you could hit your driving route and it tell you what projects are on your route on your phone, that would be useful.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So one feature of Drive NC is if you go into Drive NC and you set up what your typical route is, it will automatically send you, like if you put like here to work is my typical route on a daily basis. It will send you notifications if there's a project in your route, if there's traffic backup or an accident occurring in your route. So that is something that's available through the Drive NC application, and that is a mobile app.
Is this gonna be integrated with that where if there's active, if there's a way to have the active projects on this integrated with that, where when you go to Drive NC, the projects that are here also show up there, that would be rather than reinventing the wheel, just because that's probably where 90% of the people are gonna wanna know is how's it gonna affect their trip they're on.
I think Waze does that. Yeah.
Waze and Google Maps do a pretty good job of it.
Yeah, and Drive NC feeds Waze and Google Maps. So as projects or incidents occur, we put it into our TIMS system and then that feeds out and connects to Google Maps and Waze.
And I guess just,
Maps.
I guess to rephrase my question, is there anything that would be on this that would not show up on Drive NC?
Yes, all the active projects.
Okay,
So like if it's regular construction backups or something, then that would appear on your Google Maps or Waze. Like any delay in traffic, but regular project information and all these contacts and that's probably not going to be integrated into Google Maps just because of the complexity of the
Yeah.
data.
And I guess, I don't know that people would want all the background information. They just want to know what's between me and where I'm going.
And Google Maps won't show all the planned projects that are
Yeah.
in construction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Any other questions? I think this is.
I've got one. So obviously with all the different data sets and all the different staff entering data into those data sets, the update frequency is going to change from project to project and from project type to project type. But,
Yeah.
when you're looking at those pop-ups and it says, estimated completion or, some kind of progress, there's probably no way for the public to really know like how up to date that data really is. And so I don't know, like if NCDOT staff have like, depending on the project, there's a particular update frequency where they're supposed to be keeping it up to date and you feel confident that it's up to date, then that's fine. But if some of that stuff might not be updated as frequently as possible, you might want to consider like adding when it was updated last so that people would know this is current data. Because I think as is typical with government agencies, sometimes data out there is not super up to date. So sort of either recognizing that, or if it is up to date because it's coming from data sets that you guys are working with day in and day out, probably would be good to communicate to the public that this is current data.
I think that's what is, it is the current data because it's pulling directly from those data sets that are constantly being.
Yeah, so specifically to active construction, we have a tracking list that updates it. Well, the project managers go through and update that. So it's kind of a public facing level already. It should be updated. Now, does it always get updated that way? I'm not 100% sure because they have to pull from that data. But it's worth a question. I mean, it's worth something to consider.
Or is there just like a little hyperlink, like how often is this data updated and just sort of telling the public? Because I think there would always be that question. All right, well, it says this. Do I trust it?
Right.
Everything in projects near me should be the most current information because of it's how it's pulling the data. But back to your point, at what frequency is that being updated? But
That's more back on the data sets
Yeah.
itself rather than this application, but I totally understand what you're
Very
saying.
I think worth communicating.
Yeah.
if it's separate, it should be the most up-to-date information the public be getting.
What I think is interesting, if you look at the screen on the bottom, so I haven't changed the Zoom or anything for just a couple of minutes, and it's already saying you might want to update it. This could be stale. So I'm working backwards to think that, like Michelle said, these are data sets that get updated the most frequently.
Real time.
So someone could have updated something in one of those, what was it, 9 data sets that might have changed. I think it's as current data's.
There is a web of information they shared with me of like how this information gets put together. It is.
I told
very-
Eric not to show that slide.
Yeah,
It literally-
I was overwhelming you guys with the other ones. You would have been like, what am I looking? It's amazing. It's crazy.
I think my takeaway on how fresh the data is that's probably going to vary by project manager and by who's working on that data set. So there's probably no realistic way to make sure they're all updated with the same frequency because people work differently depending on who's working on it.
And it depends on the size of the project and, what milestone you're achieving. So it's hard to put a label on like the frequency of the update.
Exactly.
If you click on the contact info, like if it's going to send Sam an email to ask a question, does it put like a subject line, like so Sam knows this is coming from?
I've not tried that. I haven't tried it.
I don't know, but we can try it. And
I'd be interested to know, like, Sam, have you ever gotten an email where somebody was like, hey, I'm in this system, I want to know something, or, how often the project manager, I just wonder how much the public's interfacing with it.
And if it were to actually pull in the project information, so Sam has some idea what they're asking about.
Oh, that's a
Well,
good point.
that's part of the game, is to figure out what they're asking.
Back to the updates, it's in the FAQs. There's a question, how often is the map updated?
Oh, really?
I mean, I see what you're saying. There should, Wikipedia actually shows the last time that something was updated. It's just a line item that's pulled in the data. It actually in the background can do that. So it's probably worth looking at adding that line because when it's updated, the system knows it's updated at the date and time and it just needs to drop that one little bit of code into it.
And I wonder if you could eliminate a lot of contacting project managers and
So
planning
people
organizations
actually-
if somebody saw that it's been updated recently.
It's like one line of code drops that.
Just like updated this date and
Yeah.
time, what it automate, you could probably automate that, yeah. Because that's a question we will get asked and we won't know, and we'll have to ask Sam, and Sam will have to ask y'all. by the time you get it back to us, after it goes through all that, it'll have been updated.
Well, as is typical with public information, sometimes the more information you give, the more questions you generate, and then, you
I've
know,
noticed that.
yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I would encourage everybody here to make sure that your county or town PIOs know about this, link it from your website, because we have a page on Brunswick County's website that explains who does roads and who does not. I'm gonna pass this along because this might eliminate a lot of questions if this is linked there.
You know, I'm sure as elected officials, you're getting questions all the time about the status of a project.
Yes.
Forward on the link.
Any other questions for Eric? If not, thank you. Appreciate it. This is good stuff. I mean, it's a very complex thing. It's not like just where does the Rotary Club meet at what time? It's a little more than that. We'll move on to new business, and the first item is prioritization 8.0 updates, and we have a lot of information here, and then we'll have a public hearing after that. Yes, turn it over to Sam.
All right. You thought projects near me was exciting. Welcome back to prioritization. So again, as we typically do, before I get into what the specific action of today's meeting is, I'm going to back you up, try to level set and get us all on the same page about not only what we're doing today, but why and how we got here. So we're in this phase of prioritization, which is our roughly 2-year cycle of submitting projects. Those projects get scored, and then we have an opportunity to assign local input points. We're in the back half of this 2-year cycle. And this is for the purpose of updating the STIP. That is the State Transportation Improvement Program. That's DOT's 10-year long-range plan of funding projects, their schedules. So again, to show you on this calendar where we are, we're in kind of that late third quarter action of getting local input points assigned. This happens in 2 rounds of local input points. This is the first. Last fall, we submitted projects. We submit projects across 6 different modes of transportation. In your packet, there is our prioritization cheat sheet. That's a 2-pager that shows where different modes of transportation are eligible for the different funding categories. When the scores for all of the projects submitted, of which there was around 2,100 projects statewide, all of the planning organizations, all of the divisions, those scores were released at the end of May. And then they announced of the 465 projects that qualified for that first funding tier of statewide, about 1/10 of those were selected for funding. And then now we've moved on into this regional category, which we have color coded in green. Across all of Region B, which includes Brunswick and Pender counties, there's 222 projects, and then 243 in Region C, which is where our Columbus County friends are. They also, at that same time when they announced the project scores, they announced kind of a snapshot of what the funding availability was looking like at the time. We haven't received updated numbers since the end of May, so there is always a possibility that these numbers have changed in one direction or the other. I do not know. But so for the 2 regions, our funding availability is about 150 million in Region B and about 550 in Region C. And so as we had our workshops and conversations about projects, we kind of kept this in the back of our mind of what funding there is or isn't.
Go back to that last slide. I think Region B is our current region, has 150 million. Region C, which includes peers like Columbus County and Wake County that are so much alike, has 550 million.
Practically twins. Yeah. So
that looks like it was drawn by the redistricting committee in 1990.
Any questions about the funding map? And a reminder, each region is simply a combination of 2 divisions. So Region B is NCDOT divisions 2 and 3. Region C is divisions 5 and 6. So that's where it's these.
You'll be sending out these slides up to the afterward, right?
This is just a screenshot from the prioritization cheat sheet in your packet showing the three funding categories. Again, the projects that were funded through statewide have already been selected because it's purely based on data. This middle category of regional impact is what we're discussing today. The final score of these projects is only 70% based on the data, 30% on the local input points that both this board would assign as well as the divisions are also able to assign local input points. As far as project eligibility, this is why, as you may be looking over the list of projects that we're considering today, you won't find things like bicycle and pedestrian projects or any transit projects from our region. Bike and ped projects are only eligible in the division tier. That's the third tier in orange. Same with transit projects for single county transit systems, which is all we have from our three counties. It's also why some roads of projects that we may have submitted won't show up in this list because it's filtered specifically for interstates, major US routes, major NC routes. So if it's a more local type road, it won't be eligible until the third tier. This is just a visualization to show you the relative weight of local input. Again, today, the regional impact category is the part that matters. So as we assign points, you can assign up to 100 local input points on a project. You can think of that also as just taking the quantitative score, which is on the lists in your packet. And if we did the full 100, it's like adding another 15 to a project score. And the same would apply if the division were to add 100 local input points. Each planning organization and the divisions for that matter are required to have a published adopted methodology by which they assign local input points so that it's traceable how we came to this decision. Ours, as was approved by this group earlier this year, takes into account these four criteria: the quantitative score, a measure for division support. It's kind of the likelihood the division might be also putting local input points on a project. Priority within each county, that was the main topic of the county workshops that we had back in July. Kind of dividing up our projects into these four categories: high, medium, low, and none. Trying to identify the priorities of our priorities. And then the final category is project development. Effectively, I think of it as kind of bonus points for any projects that already have feasibility studies, already have some amount of preliminary design, maybe have right of way in progress, or might be in the STIP currently, or it might be a sibling of a project in the STIP. Think if you have a widening segment that's already under construction and we're trying to widen from there on, that kind of makes it a sibling kind of along that same corridor. That's where that term comes
Sam,
from.
before you move on,
What's up?
I gotta ask a question. It's probably a dumb question. But who's the knucklehead in Raleigh that determines how much money we get? I mean, our district is far and away the fastest growing area in the state. And we get $150 million to last for years. Sounding dumb, what the heck am I gonna do with $150 million? That's not a lot of work.
It's a couple potholes.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't somebody say, well, this area is exploding? Brunswick, New Hanover, Pender is just exploding. Shouldn't we put a few more dollars there?
Well, and so I won't claim to know the full formula off the top of my head, but some of that funding availability for new projects is also compared against the money that's already committed to projects underway. And so I know at least across Division 3, which is where that 150 you're talking about, you have, one section of 211 happening. You've got the Hampstead bypass underway. So like a lot of these already very
It's
expensive
not enough
projects.
money to cover those two projects.
Well, those are already paid
I
for.
get it, but phase 2 of 211, what you gotta do, because now you got a bottleneck at one end and a bottleneck at the other. It's just dumb.
Go round and round in circles from Oak Island.
Yeah,
all the way
right.
around.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe something we can have at a future meeting is a presentation on what that formula looks like and how it works, just for our own education.
Yeah, I'd like to see
Yeah, I'd
that.
like to see it.
Sure, we can bring someone in to explain
Whose door we need to knock on?
Probably from, I would think the STIP unit.
Yeah.
Or whose driveway to
Okay.
put that
So let's understand that the person we invite probably didn't write the formula too. We don't need to throw darts at that person. They just don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure statewide, there's probably forecasting revenue. I mean, there's not enough money to go to all the project needs.
Oh, there's never enough money, I get that.
Especially when it goes to other
But a
things,
little-
not transportation.
A little better distribution of the
Yeah.
statewide funds to go where the people are.
Well, I mean, we'll let.
Yeah, I'll track someone down and have them come for our next meeting.
Hey,
Let the record reflect that ringtone is still very active.
Well, and Mike, one of the things I like to keep in mind is while you're right that this area is growing really fast, you know, the population of, you know, here is nothing like the population in Raleigh.
I
So
get it.
like that's why you've got Region C with 550 million relative. Now, it's also related to what projects they have funded and what's left over, but
I understand it,
Yeah.
like the great state of Mecklenburg. You know, they get whatever they want. The great state of Wade gets anything and everything they want. But that doesn't mean ignore, you know, the other 98 counties to the point where, oh, here's some crumbs, shut up and take it.
I suspect it's proportional, but you know, based on what.
The regional categories are proportional to population. So that is another factor, but
Population from when? Because if they didn't do it in the last 2 years, that's a big difference.
it's a good question. I don't know the
And I
data.
think one of the challenges is that every region is short of what it needs. That's
Right.
another challenge. I mean, every single region in the state is way short of what it needs because there's, you know, the needs for the whole state have outpaced the revenue. And then you've got something like Helene that comes in.
Yeah,
Decimates everything in the mountains. And not only is the road gone, the mountain the road was on is gone. I mean, so it's, and in Florence did it down here and it's, I think there's probably a much larger systemic issue than just that too.
We'll bring someone in.
Back to you, Sam.
Yeah. So these are the criteria that we use to decide where our local input points are gonna go. We gather these 4 things, we weight them thus. And then what that gives you after that, you have it in your packet, but also that little second set of staples behind your big packet is a bigger version of, I can also give you a smooth copy that's not folded if you want to frame it for your entryway at home. Be very proud of all the colors.
Like a nice dark.
well, I think,
And so that's the result of the, point assignments from our methodology. And then from there, once we have what's effectively a new score for each of our projects, we follow this method of kind of putting together a draft list of point assignments.
And that's the method this board adopted, correct?
That's correct. We take the top 2 scoring highway projects from each county, so 2 from Brunswick, 2 from Columbus, 2 from Pender. And then we take the top 3 non-highway projects, and that's RPO wide. So the top 3 scoring non-highway projects. And then from there, that's 9 projects that are receiving points. And then however many points we have left, just cascade to whatever is the next highest scoring. Okay.
And obviously, if it doesn't score high enough, it doesn't matter if we put points on it, it's not gonna have a chance of getting funded.
Correct. So the top 2 scoring highway projects in Brunswick County were the widening of 211 from Sunset Harbor to Midway. And then adding turn lanes at a couple intersections along NC 87 in BSL. So we're proposing full points on that. Already communicated with GSATs on the 211 project. That one crosses our planning boundary.
Right.
So that's why we have 88, they have 12. So maxing out the full points for that project. The top 2 scoring highway projects in Columbus County, upgrading US 74 to interstate standards. That one again is a long corridor that we share with the Lumber River RPO. Spoken to their RPO director. They are also planning to put their share, which is how we get our full 100 between us and them on that project. As well as continuing the work on 87 up in the Regalwood area, kind of that widening project.
I can comment on that top one. Obviously, that would be probably a hugely expensive project. So people are probably thinking, why are we funding something that may take up more than the entire budget for the area? we can't get things like federal grants for anything like that if we don't put it on prioritization, is my understanding. Is that right?
It can be a factor depending on what the NOFO says.
Okay, but it certainly doesn't hurt it to take, it helps the opportunity to get other money if it's on your list.
And even if the funding, cost of DOT is one thing, it could get picked up for PE to at least get started.
Right.
So it might not get funded for the entire construction of the project, but it could be phased in.
Which makes it more commonsensical to continue it once you've started it.
And then our top two scoring highway projects in Pender County, upgrading effectively that roundabout intersection that's on the island when you come across the bridge in Surf City, as well as modernizing 117 from Rocky Point up towards Paradox. That's full 100 on those two projects.
I guess before we move on, does anybody have any questions or concerns about the project from their county? That's obviously we have that in our method because we want to make sure that we don't want to have all the projects in Brunswick or all the projects in Columbus, or we want to make sure that we treat every county fairly. So is everybody good with the projects that were listed in your county? Before we move on to the other things, but we'll assume those are good unless we hear otherwise. It's Sam.
From there, that was top two highway projects in each county. Now the top three scoring non-highway projects across the RPO for the regional funding category, we ended up with 3 ferry projects. And the way that we've done these ferry projects is we've coordinated with the Wilmington MPO and a couple other RPOs, which I'll mention in a second, but specifically on the Fort Fisher Southport ferry. Our methodology highlighted 2 projects from that ferry line, and then Wilmington MPO's methodology highlighted a separate Southport Fort Fisher ferry project. So they're putting full points on that. We're putting full points on these 2 and kind of donating our share because it's a 50-50 split with each side of the line. So that's why you have there in parentheses how the donations are working. But what that really comes out to on paper is just that we're putting 100 points on it.
And the Mans Harbor, when you, every MPO or RPO in the state that has a ferry contributes to that, correct?
Correct. And there's 5 of us that share responsibility for these Mans Harbor projects. The reason I have a star next to it is because this is updated since the TCC saw it last week. They recommended these assignments as you're seeing them today. But we had some changes with this one. We were planning to put the full 100 points on it in reaching out to the other RPOs. So Wilmington MPO is going to take our donation of 20. That's why there's 40 up there, 20 for us, 20 for them. 2 of the other RPOs were already planning to put their 20 points on it. And then one of the RPOs have already approved their list and their methodology didn't allow them to go back and add the 20 points. So between all of us, it's getting 80 of the 100 points that it could get from planning organizations. But that's just a slight change since the TCC saw this information last week. I like that. But yeah, that's because at the Mans Harbor Shipyard, that impacts all of the other ferry routes across the state. So we kind of carve up responsibility for projects that way.
Were there any other projects that came close to matching these in terms of scoring from other modes or anything, or were these clearly the top 3?
There were a couple exceptions, which I'll get to in just a second, but these were pretty clearly some of the highest scoring.
Sam, you mentioned that there's a ferry project that Wilmington is putting points on. Are they putting 100 points on it?
Yes.
So we're not accepting a donation from them.
We are accepting a donation, which is how it's getting 100, but it's 100 of their points, but it'll end up 50 and 50, which just on the technical back end where how we submit the points. It's still getting, there are 3.
You're assigning their points.
Correct. Just like these 2 projects, we'll be giving them 50 each that they'll have to assign.
So basically, they're funding the Fort Fisher side, we're funding the Southport side.
Basically,
Okay.
that's how that works point wise.
Yeah.
Does the accepting of those points need to be on the list so that, because we're going to put points on that project?
It'll be on here in a second.
Okay, sorry, I'm jumping the gun.
Yeah. So after those, then it's just the remaining.
Anybody have any
Oh, yeah, sure.
objections to
Yeah,
those before we move on?
Any questions about these?
If not, all good with those as the top 3 non-highway.
Is it just ferry and rail that's eligible at this tier in?
That's correct.
Okay.
And there will be a rail project in just a minute. No questions on these 3?
If not, we'll move on.
The final set is just the next highest scoring. And so we've got the upgrade the intersection at Mako Road and 7476 to an interchange. That one getting full 100 points. The next one is the interchange at US 17 and NC 211. This is another one that we share with GSATs because of where the planning boundaries are. Previously, we had 17 points assigned. They had 83. But between a couple projects that we shared, GSATs ended up with just 5 leftover points that they weren't putting on anything. And so they are donating 5 points to us to put towards this project, which is why it now has 88 points from GSATs, 12 points from us. So again, another minor change since the TCC saw this list last week, but still full 100 points going to that interchange project at 17 and 211. And then 100 points on the intersection of 410 and 7476 business there in Chadburn. That's a project that's already got some, or maybe it's just an express design underway. I think that one might have preliminary engineering in the STIP currently. And then just north of that, the intersection of 410 and US 76, roundabout there in Columbus County, improving the intersection of 117 bypass and NC 53 in Burgaw. That's kind of on the northeast side of town where kind of near where the Walmart and the Food Line. Intersections at 17 and 210 in Surf City. This is kind of out on the edge along 17 next to the Lowe's and the Harris Teeter. And then we had 8 remaining points left over. Well, let me back up. That last project in Surf City did not have a full 100 points on it when the TCC saw it last week. But since we had the extra points that we were going to donate to the other RPOs for the ferry project that they didn't need because they're already putting their points on it, that maxed out this Surf City project and left us with 8 left over to put on the next highest scoring project, which was the Delco bypass in mostly Columbus, part of Brunswick County. So that's where those 3 stars are coming from, slight changes since last week when the TCC saw it. Any questions on this list of projects?
Any questions, concerns, objections? One thing I would notice is point out, it says, while it says regardless of mode or location, there are 2 Brunswick, 2 Columbus, and 2 Pender on this list. So that's good.
We're loving that 17 to 11 intersection upgrade.
And that could be considered a sibling to the one on the prior, which is the widening, right?
I can't remember that one. I mean, it definitely doesn't lose any amount of priority from us or GSATs. I can't remember if it technically qualifies as a sibling, but
A sibling doesn't really make it like score high enough.
no.
Yeah, at this point, it's already in the system.
Yeah.
We're gonna support it as much as we can.
Yeah, a sibling only matters with like it being
Submission.
carried over versus
Okay.
the middle that Sam handled.
Okay, so we're good on this list. So then there were 3 projects that Wilmington MPO is donating points to us on that we're not having to put any of our original set of points on. So we share the upgrade US 7476 corridor from Mako Road to Mount Misery. We have 11% of that project. They have 89. It scored very highly in both of our methodologies. They decided to max out 100 points. And so we're accepting 11 from them for our share of that corridor. Also scored highly in both of our methodologies, but they were the ones that submitted that rail project R230522, which is to upgrade the rail from Wilmington to Raleigh for passenger service. And so they have communicated with all the planning organizations along that corridor. I think there are 6 of us, and they are covering the full 100 points. And so 16% of that share is ours. So we would be accepting 16 points from them. And then there's that third Southport, Fort Fisher ferry project that scored highly in their methodology. They're putting a full 100 points on it, which includes giving 50 to us for our share of the project.
Any questions about the?
Okay. So in our methodology, one of the things that it requires is that if we deviate from it in any way, that we need to track that. So a couple of things, just again, to make sure that it's all on the record of a few ways that we did deviate from kind of the order of projects on our methodology. The first is that this widening project from US 7476 from Mako to Mount Misery, we're not putting any of our points on it, even though it was our number one other. It would have been in that third kind of grouping of projects, simply because Wilmington MPO is giving us the points to put on it. So we skipped that one. Okay. Same thing with with the passenger rail project. It would have been our number 2 scoring non-highway project. Since they're donating us our share of points, we skipped it for that part of the methodology. What then would have been our number 3 and number 4 scoring non-highway projects were simply just 2 halves of what was our number 1 non-scoring or non-highway project, which was the ferry project. And that one was additional ramps at both sides of the ferry route. We had also submitted it as individual, just the ramps for Southport and just the ramps for Fort Fisher. We figured we didn't need to assign points on them separately since we were already putting points on the combo project, which scored better.
That's all noted in what we'll be adopting, is
That
that
is
correct?
correct. Yeah, this is all in a memo that's attached to the final spreadsheet. So then that's how we got points submitted to this Mans Harbor Shipyard project, even though it would have been our number 5 non-highway project. We had skipped a couple, which is where it fell in line as our second. And the same with this, we bypassed what would have been the number 6 project for another ferry project, improving both the operations buildings and the visitor centers at either side of the ferry line. We skipped number 6 to put points on number 7 because it would account for both sides of the ferry route. And since us and Wilmington were to put points on it, we wanted it to be a project that included improvements on both sides. And again, this is listed out in the memo that's in your packet. But any questions on, I think all.
Question for you for ramps. Is it just for breakdowns and things like that? Like we've had several times over the last year that the ramp broke, ferry service had stopped.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just a backup thing.
It's like building in, yeah, redundancy and also potentially, extra capacity down the road.
And then
Down the water.
the other vessel is another ferry. Is that what the?
Yes, that project, which is the one that Wilmington is donating us points for.
Yes,
That would be, not a replacement vessel, but
just an
an
additional.
additional one.
Any questions on any of that?
Okay, so as has already been mentioned, I want to give you a tally. We ended up with a pretty as even a split as we could get in terms of where we're assigning points across the RPO region. Both in terms of the number of projects and frankly, in terms of the number of points going on those projects. So just showing here,
The methodology works.
the methodology works. Or so I would submit to you that it works. Also wanted to point out, I don't have a visual for this, but I sent out links throughout the summer to a site, public engagement site that NCDOT set up. That was a mapping application, very similar to the projects near me that Eric showed earlier, but that had all of the projects that were submitted in prioritization. And it was an opportunity for the public to get on and they could thumbs up or thumbs down a project. They could leave a comment. We got 107 comments on projects in the Cape Fear RPO across this round of public engagement. And I read through all of them. And I can tell you that the feedback we got, the projects that people cared the most about, are also on the list that we're putting points on.
Good.
So I think that lines up with where.
Were they concentrated in one area or were they scattered pretty well distributed as far as
If you
content?
want to take a guess of the 107, how many were NC 211? You willing to accept?
103.
No, no, only 46.
Really?
Yeah. But two-thirds of the comments were either 211 or 7476.
Yeah.
So.
And just a reminder too, like while we value and we look at and we review the public feedback and the input that's received on that, it's not necessarily a vote and it's not a popularity contest for the feedback on
Right.
projects. It's something we evaluate and we look at with the decision for the division points, but I just want everyone in this room to understand that it is not a voting mechanism. It is not a popularity contest of whatever project gets most thumbs up is where we're gonna put our points. It's simply just a way that the public can solicit their feedback, put their comments in, show support for a project. So as we evaluate and work with the RTO, you know, that it makes sense for parents.
Any other questions for Sam?
So basically where we're at now, you know, if / once these point assignments are approved, we being the MPOs and RPOs and the divisions have until the 28th to just go online and submit our point assignments. As I mentioned, you know, this will wrap up the regional impact phase of assigning points, and we'll do this same exercise all over again for all the projects that qualify for the division needs tier, to basically be this list plus the rest of our submittals that weren't eligible for this category. And so we've got our county workshops to go through our methodology, do that high, medium, low discussion. Those have already been set up essentially for the first 3 Tuesdays in October. If you didn't get a save the date for that in your county, let me know. I'll resend that to you. But I'll have more info for those workshops as we get closer. And I think that's it. So yeah, we are required by our public involvement policy to our participation plan to have a public hearing for this prior to the TAC taking action.
I got a quick question.
What's up?
So with the last minute shuffle, we ended up with 8 points on the Delco bypass, which is definitely not going to help that project get funded. Is there any opportunity to coordinate with an adjacent planning organization to put 8 points on something that would have some value to the Cape Fear RPO, to Lumber River for something along 74, or anywhere we could put those points that would help us better than 8 points on a project as its total funded?
Off the top of my head, I do not know.
Maybe when the board adopts this, they would specifically authorize you to, if you can find a good location for those 8 points, to allow you to make that pivot.
Well, maybe just a thought. I noticed on there, remaining points to the next highest scoring projects regardless of mode. The bottom one's getting 43 points because that's what we had left. Is that correct? It says remaining local input points.
So look at the chart that was printed out separate from the packet. I apologize. The one that's in the big packet is a few days old. So that was the one that got maxed out.
Okay.
After the change.
Where is it on here?
The bottom of the first page. So the one that is listed at the number 8 other in the comment, that's the one that had 43 points. And
Where is it on here again? Because the bottom one on here is the Delco bypass.
right, so the one above that,
One above it, okay.
that was.
So it's got 100.
It's got 100.
If I could just talk for Division 3's sake, GFAS has maxed out all their points for all of their highway projects, so they didn't have any remainders. And then Wilmington's methodology is essentially to go after their top like 13 to 15 projects. So they're essentially, by them giving points for these other projects, they're maxing their projects out. We're not really seeing one that just needs like 9 more or 5 more on our end. I haven't looked for Division 6, but just so you're aware, I've tried to consider that.
Yeah. If that is a caveat that the board would include in their approval of this, and I can check with all of our neighboring planning organizations just to see if there is, like Alan said, a way that those 8 points could.
I mean, even if it's not something that benefits us right now, but perhaps it would be in the future, they would give us 8 points
Exactly,
back.
just some goodwill.
So I can check on that.
Yeah. Any other questions for Sam before we open the public hearing?
Yeah, because I mean, it could be 74 in Rockingham or in Wadesboro even,
Yeah.
would benefit us.
Does it have to be an adjacent organization, or could we loan them to Raleigh and tell them to send us money?
No.
We don't need it.
No, it does not have to be adjacent. I could call up Rose in the mountains and say, hey, do you want 8 points? And she's.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Anything-
good.
Your stinking point.
Okay.
If nothing else, we will open the public hearing for regional impact, local input point assignments. Any public comments online? We'll go there first. Any in the room? Do our liaisons have anything? Going once, going twice. Seeing no public comments, we will close the public hearing and would need a motion to approve the point input assignments. And if you're so inclined with the caveat that Alan mentioned to,
I move for approval
with the caveat.
with the cat.
Okay, is there a second? Second by Mayor Whitehall. Any discussion? And I'm assuming you'll make sure the minutes reflect the caveat that one. Going once, going twice, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is an administrative modification of our planning work program, also known as our budget.
Yep. I did one similar to this in our last meeting. This was at the close of last fiscal year, so FY 26. We just simply needed to make a couple of tweaks to the budgeted amount in some of our line items to line it up with where we actually spend our time. None of the changes met the DOT's threshold for a formal amendment that this body would need to approve. That's why it's called an administrative modification. But simply wanted to include it here for your information and to have on the record. But this was simply just tidying up the line items in PWP, which is, like Commissioner Williams said, our budget at the close of last fiscal year. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions on that? Going once, going twice. If no questions, we'll move on to reports and updates. And the first is Cape Fear RPO.
Okay, just a few quick things to share with you. One is that we have another because this happened last year, a pedestrian safety call for projects from DOT. This is specifically for small urban or rural areas to submit pedestrian safety projects that can be implemented pretty quickly. So thinking marked crosswalks, maybe small segments of sidewalk, but they'd need to be short. And these would be projects that would get designed and delivered within about a year or two's time.
They're budgeted on funding for fiscal years, but we have 2 fiscal years associated for these projects. So every project presents its own challenge.
Yeah.
So it's tough to say one project that you submit is going to easily be submitted and accepted and implemented into construction. But that's what we try to look at when the projects get submitted, is we can narrow down the ones that are going to be feasible within that timeline.
Yeah.
And within budget.
Okay. So the takeaway being low cost safety improvements for pedestrians. And that is open through the 28th. We've been coordinating with a couple of towns across the RPO. Some that have a few new projects since the window opened last year, and some that are just resubmitting projects that they submitted last time that didn't get funding. So that's been communicated to the TCC and to staff across the region, but wanted it to be on your radar as well.
One important bullet from this, and if you read down toward the bottom, local matching funds are not needed for selected
Yep.
projects. That's important, especially for small jurisdiction. If your project gets selected, it does not require matching funds from your jurisdiction.
And Sam, these projects are submitted by the jurisdiction, not by the RPO.
Both can happen.
I have a handout for who's eligible to submit if anyone would like that. It's everyone.
Yeah.
There's really not anyone that can, so.
Oh, bless, need to.
Might be on the sidewalk.
On behalf of the,
Is this where the funding is for in Southport from the ABC toward the hospital?
No.
My favorite project ever.
Yeah. No,
Got it correct?
that one came through the larger prioritization process.
So important.
What we never figured out is
in a year.
what was the starting point, what was the ending point of that project?
Goes both ways.
Any questions on this? Because I think that's a good opportunity if you have a project, but you don't have a lot of time.
These are just a few updates to the current STIP. That's the 2026 to 35. Just a few projects that I added from the safety division, like installing rumble strips, as well as a couple of small pedestrian improvements that I think are connected to the last call for pedestrian safety projects. So some crossings in Surf City and some pedestrian improvements there in White Bull as well. So those are included in the packet. Or another reminder on our meeting calendar, our next meeting is going to be in October. It got moved up a week. It was previously scheduled on the 16th. We now have it scheduled on the 9th. I updated the electronic invitation. But I wanted to remind you here, and obviously I'll, keep reminding you up until that date.
Then our final meeting of the year is on Friday, the 13th.
My mom's birthday, November 13th.
Friday.
So I'll sing to her. She'll love that. Okay, the last thing is, this is something we had a presentation on last time in our June meeting. We had a presentation from NATO talking about funding for RTPOs, so Regional Transportation Planning Organizations, which are effectively federally funded RPOs. And one of the things that Kevin discussed was, they've been working on either supporting or encouraging legislation to actually provide the federal funding for RTPOs, which are, what's the word I'm looking for? They've been authorized to exist, but there isn't an actual funding stream to support them currently. But then he was talking about how they kind of switched to, instead of creating a brand new program to fund that federally, one thing that they are kind of working, kind of supporting is kind of creating he called it a carve out within the existing SPR program, the State Planning and Research. That's where our RPO funds currently come from through NCDOT. When we left that discussion, this group asked me to put together a letter for our federal and state representatives, kind of pass along that information. Mostly I'm bringing this back. I have not yet put a letter together, so I'm a little unsure of what it is we want to pass along. Some information, some of this did get passed along to Rouser's office through Chance Lambeth, who attended that presentation and followed up with Kevin afterwards. And so I know that he got all of the same information to pass along. But as far as the letter coming from this, for one, the distinction, I want to make sure the letter comes from the TAC and not from me, because I don't want to get myself in trouble with anything. But also just trying to make sure I understand what it is we want to contribute in this conversation.
I would think, number one, we support it. If nobody has an objection, because, federal funding that we're currently not getting. Number two, that rather than reinvent the wheel in North Carolina, the RPO should also be the RTPO rather than them drawing some whole new set of groups, because you never know, the federal government might do that.
Well, and that's one of the things that still, even though I've talked to FHWA, that's Federal Highways, still a little uncertain as to what becoming an RTPO would actually mean, like what we would need to do.
And I think the other thing is to make sure that it doesn't hamstring what we're already doing or in any way harm us.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. I have no idea what kind of strings would come attached to it, but there usually are with anything federal. So we need to find some way to make sure that we have the flexibility in North Carolina to do what we're required to do at the state and the federal government without one offsetting the other.
Okay.
Especially with this being a whole new thing. I mean, federal money can be good, but it can also bring lots of shackles you have to wear.
Okay.
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Being it's state and federal, we have our annual NCACC conference next week, and I chair the General Government Committee. Would it help to have a letter from the NCACC? Because it is statewide.
It's a good question. I don't know.
Maybe submit a legislative goal. We got
That's exactly
we
what
got
I'm
about 2
thinking.
weeks left on the legislative goal.
I just wrote that down.
Yeah.
I mean, I can also tell, there is, among the RPO Association, there is uncertain, like there hasn't been any official backing from that group about going after this, because it's still kind of unknown what it would require of us.
Maybe say we conditionally support it, not we blanket support it. We support it provided that it doesn't hurt us.
So if you want, what I can do is put a draft together and try to gather some more of that background information and bring it back for you to look at our next meeting.
And there's no hot and heavy deadline before our next meeting that we need to send it by, is there? Maybe if for some reason a deadline comes up that we have the option to send it out by email for people to review.
Yeah, if something comes up,
Yeah.
I'll kind of fast track it that way, but if not, I'll work on that and have that for you.
Although I think they may be largely recessed, it seems like, for a while.
Okay, well then I'll keep looking into that and have.
And I guess one question is, obviously that's a federal program, but our state folks would need to know about it in terms of any changes that need to be made at the state level to accommodate it if it happens. And so we probably need to make sure our letter is addressed to both.
That was the last thing I had. So if there was something I didn't.
Questions from Sam?
Yeah, any questions?
If not, next up is NC Ports. Any report or anyone online?
I don't think Stephanie is online. One thing she shared in the TCC meeting was that a resolution that this group provided to support, I believe it was a build grant that they submitted earlier this year for a pedestrian bridge, basically a parking lot area off the port, and then a pedestrian bridge for employees to walk over into the port. That got awarded.
Good.
And so the port's happy about that, and from Stephanie to y'all, she says thanks.
Can I ask a question about ports?
Yeah.
Are there any way we could, see about dredging out, the river?
That's probably a question way above the pay grade of this board.
Are there any way we can go and start putting some kind of support behind it? Because if we can dredge that river down.
Well, Southport disagrees with it.
Yeah, some of the towns along the Brunswick County.
Yeah,
River.
I was gonna say that a larger conversation would need to be had if this group was gonna support something like that.
And who's speaking? I can't see.
Sorry, Tommy Brown from Oak Island.
Okay. Yeah, I would think that's not as clear as it would seem.
Thanks, Tommy. Rebecca Kelly, Southport.
Yeah. Anything else from ports? If not, ferry division, anybody on?
I believe Melissa's online. Melissa, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Good morning. Included in the agenda packet today is a link and a QR code for a survey. The Institute for Transportation Research and Education, ITRI, at NC State is asking for input to better understand the ferry passengers' needs and experiences. The study will capture the economic impact of the North Carolina ferry system. We only have 58 responses representing the Southport Fort Fisher route so far, and we'd love to improve those numbers. So anything you all could do to take the survey or boost it would be greatly appreciated. We'll be doing another round on social media soon. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email is also included on this slide that Sam has and in the agenda packet. For specific to the Southport Fort Fisher route, our ridership remains strong despite the aquarium being closed. A ramp backup system is being planned to assist with reliability and options in the event of mechanical or electrical issues. Currently, we are working through a ramp redesign to further support reliability for the route. Dredging is expected to potentially occur this fall at Southport. And we did receive some expansion funds to clean out our dredge material placement area at Southport to assist in having enough space for future dredging events. The approved state budget included $61.9 million in recurring funding to support ongoing ferry division operations. And we also received $39.2 million in one-time investments to improve reliability, resiliency, and long-term sustainability of the North Carolina ferry system. There are various projects that impact different RPOs, but from a statewide standpoint, the shipyard is getting some much deserved attention. And you all have discussed it earlier, how each of the MPOs and RPOs that have routes support the shipyard because this is where we do most of the maintenance for all of the routes. But we've got some good investments coming to the shipyard to improve our water infrastructure, electrical systems, compressed air system, stormwater, and then additional railway cars to support our dry dock operations. And then The route in your jurisdiction already has a toll, but you all may be aware that there was a legislative requirement to implement tolling on all ferry routes beginning January 1. So we are currently evaluating tolling technology, terminal infrastructure, customer payment options, toll rates, and we'll be conducting quite a bit of public outreach. Our first round of public interaction meetings have been scheduled. I think the closest to you all would be in Grantsboro. We focused on a geographic area on the routes that currently do not have tolling, but will be getting tolling. So we will have lots of additional stakeholder engagement opportunities throughout the fall, and I'll make sure to share those with you all. We are developing a program of projects for long-range planning to identify and prioritize facility, terminal, vessel, and infrastructure needs over the next 10 years. The program will help guide us in funding requests and improve our project readiness. We are still awaiting news on a rural ferry grant program application that we submitted. We did receive notification yesterday that the application we had submitted for a crane through the small shipyard grant, we did not receive an award in that round. So we'll continue to seek funding, especially for these shipyard projects, because we know that it's difficult having them spread across all the MPOs. So as much as we can do to find grant support for these projects here at the shipyard, we'll continue to pursue those. But that concludes my update this morning. Thank you.
Melissa, when does that survey close? When do you need people to complete it by?
It's through the end of the year, but we're really trying to get as much participation as we can while our ridership is strong in the summer months. But it'll remain open through December.
Sam, can you send that as a separate email to all the Brunswick County people that are, and all the municipal people, especially in that area, both here and on the TCC, and encourage them to promote it? Because that's certainly, especially the Southport Oak Island area, both, it'd be good for them to get it out there, and also our liaisons from the towns that aren't on this board.
Melissa, do you think that any of the study that you guys are doing into the mechanics of implementing tolls at any of the other routes might influence the way that you guys handle the existing tolling on Southport Fort Fisher?
Yes. We're, because of the tight timeline, what we are trying to do is get something in place to add tolling to the routes where we don't have it. But because it will be something that will be ferry system wide, we do expect that we'll be making improvements to tolling across all of the routes. We're looking at kind of phase one, which is just getting tolling stood up in the places where we don't have it. And then I think there will be continued process improvement on all routes going forward after we get it stood up.
Any other questions for Melissa? If not, thank you, Melissa, and we'll move on
Thank
to
you.
Division 3.
Thank you. So just as we talked about previously, our project packets, to go through those quickly here. We have our first section that we go into is our projects in development. Within the calendar year, we have a couple bridge replacement projects that are noted first on there. There's the reduced conflict intersection construction that has some temporary staging that's ongoing right now. It's at the intersection of US 17 and Governor's Road / Green Hill Road. Current install is going to have temporary bollards that are put in place to deviate traffic that's there, as well as create a crossover for emergency access to the Winnebago Fire Department. The next project that's on there is NC 210 Pender County and Watts Landing, the improvement of that intersection, turning that to a full signalized intersection with right-of-way acquisition currently in progress, and utility relocation to begin August of 2026. So that's ongoing right now. Under the calendar year, we still are looking at NC 53 and US 117. That's an improved intersection of Wilmington Street and Walker. That's in Berghoff. That's a signal expansion, and a right turn lane. They've been working with the right-of-way issues that they've had known for that intersection that have been ongoing. And those are currently in progress. Jumping into construction in the orange section, we have the project highlights. If you want to go through those one by one, I'll start at the top and go to the bottom. But the first two projects that are on there are bridge projects that are going to be coming off due to vegetation growth and establishment underway, removing erosion control devices. That would be for the first bridge replacement project over Price Creek. The next one over Long Creek is also planned to be removed from this list as it's approaching its finish line. There was some environmental erosion implementation that they had to get in line, and there was some final surveying work that's going through right now. They're essentially getting to the end of that project. The third one on here is our 211 expansion. We all had seen the large traffic shift that had taken place in July this last month. And they are still working on now flipping that. Well, they flipped the traffic over, but they're working on establishment of the new roadway just as they did previously. And so a lot of earthwork going on at grading.
Projects, real quick, some of the, at the stoplights where you're turning right or left onto and off of 211, it's unclear and we have people going the wrong direction. If there's some sort of temporary striping we can do, like to show people where they need to go, that could potentially save some lives.
You know which intersection specifically?
Well, specifically the one right at the River Mist community, when you're going into towards Southport, people making that left turn, it's somewhat divided with the 4 lanes there, and people are going to the wrong side of the 4 lanes.
Yeah, I witnessed it.
And then the when you're going, I don't know that there's another way to block it, but now that they've got the turn making a right to go to the left off of 211 to get to Oak Island, people are still making that left turn. I don't know how else we deal with that other than the signage that's there.
So mostly on the southern end, going towards the south end of that project, you see a lot of striping issues.
And that's a big striping issue. And then there's going into just past where so if you're going towards Southport on 211, just past the intersection at Midway, there is a turn lane to go into the hotel. There are not turn lanes to go into the community that has a couple hundred homes there. So we're seeing traffic and backups and potential issues. I think I've seen 2 accidents there just in the last week.
Thank you, Rebecca. And this is exactly why we need community liaisons here, because I don't live in that part of the county, so I don't see that. And that's why, you know, all the community liaisons that are not here, we need to try to get them to either come or log in. Probably log in because this room's getting full. But any other questions or anything else you needed?
Well, there's just more ongoing work that they're working through for the new establishment of the flip that traffic at this moment. So there is another project that's noted on there for construction that's working towards pre-construction right now. That's a new route that's along US 74. The last segment of projects that we highlight are maintenance and resurfacing projects. Those projects can be accessed in the next link as well that show upcoming projects that are going to go into the HMIT system and funding for resurfacing. There are numerous projects that are ongoing. Some are approaching its punch list work right now. And other projects are well underway. So if there's something in specifics to resurfacing you have a question on, you can come back to me. We can sort that out. Just as we highlighted for Project Steer Me, we do have another link, and Sam touched on this. This is in reference to the resource feature for public input. This was that voting system that was put into place that just showed some public outreach and some additional information, as Michelle was talking about. But this is still actively available. You just cannot add to it. So you cannot put any more votes to a project. You cannot comment on a project further. This is still a great application though, because if you're ever considering what projects were getting supported, even if it doesn't get points in local allocation at this point for regional funding, these are probably priorities that are going to stick around for our state for a while. So keep this link handy and come back to these.
Will this resource reactivate or engagement in the next round in the division needs?
I don't believe so, but we didn't ask that question yet, right? We didn't.
I think we're waiting for Emily to give them a response.
Okay. So the only reason why I said that was because projects are going to be the same projects that move into division needs that are here.
Yeah.
So they had projects that showed just division needs as well, because people could put points on it.
Okay.
So I think it would, I don't know how much more benefit they would get out of it other than having more time associated
Okay.
and allow people to consider those. Plus, if a project did get funded at regional, then it wouldn't have to show up.
Just
Like-
good to know. Okay, so.
It'll still be accessible to have the application, so even if we don't provide an answer, we don't get a follow-up back, everyone still has access and could check that on their phone. But if we do get that, I'll make sure to give that back to you, Sam.
That works.
Update.
It'd be nice if that's sort of active for like public engagement for particular project development, timeline, so that the public is always going to the same site with the same interface to provide comments, whether it's statewide or on a particular project, and, maybe you would identify which window or whatever that comment is associated with, but, when there's a project in development, they go to the public and ask them for comments, and if they have to go to a different place to provide their comment, it's gonna be confusing.
Sure. This is the first time they put this out, is my awareness, so I think it's a good step, but I like where that's going.
Any other questions for Eric?
I have a comment, not a question. Sam, Eric, whoever is responsible for putting that traffic light on Old Ocean Highway and Midway Road. Good job, thank you. That's been needed forever.
Now just make it not blink.
Well, then we always do that. Anytime a new traffic light, for 2 weeks it
Yeah,
blinks yellow
yeah.
before we turn it into an
It'll be
active.
inactivated.
Just to give people a heads up.
Yeah,
that it's
yeah.
there.
Yeah,
That was the regional traffic safety office that identified that and got that in, so.
Super excited.
It's a good first step.
yeah.
I was just wondering what took them so long to put one at 130 and 17 at the overpass.
Oh.
Those.
That's
two lights-
GSAC.
Probably GSAC.
That's GSAC.
Okay, yeah.
That's not us.
Okay, because that's been needed for 20 years. Or since the overpass was built anyway.
No, but thank you. Whoever did it, thank you. That's.
Yeah, I'm happy to see that. Move on to Division 6. Who do we have?
We got Philip Hart online with us, I believe. Philip, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, good deal. So Division 6, District 3, Columbus County, I'll cover those projects. Next slide. Is our project that's been on the list for several years now. It's the grade separation of NC 11 and NC 87 in Columbus County. We've about 80% complete on that with estimated completion in early 27. They're working final surface prep for bridge structure. They're paving and doing some vegetation type work. Next slide is, I believe our next two slides really are highway or interstate maintenance projects. Basically consist of pavement rehab and bridge rehab type work. I believe both of these projects are going to kind of finish up ahead of schedule. We've got 92% complete on this with the estimated completion in the summer of 27. But again, hoping to have that completed well before then. Our next project is again along the same corridor of US 74 or future I-74. This one's not as far ahead as the other, but we're about 3/4 of the way done on it with the estimated completion date again in the summer of 27. Hoping to have that done ahead of schedule. Our next project on the list is a bridge replacement over Mills Eddy Road, over Mills Creek on Mills Eddy Road. We're about 90% complete on that, with the estimated completion later this year, November 26. Hoping to have all that done. As it notes in the project comments, they're working to kind of address those final punch list items, and this will likely come off our next report or at our next meeting.
I know it's 86%. Is the bridge still closed or is it open now for traffic?
I would assume it's open to traffic. Most of the time when it comes to like the final punch list items, it's, establishing, final vegetation, kind of picking up their work zone, traffic controls signs and addressing maybe, if there's some pavement markings or just really, really minor type stuff. Normally when it goes to a punch list, I would say it's within 30 days of completion.
Yeah, I didn't remember. I thought that I had noticed that the detour signs were gone, and Commissioner Coleman says it's open, so that's he probably would know as well as anybody.
I was there the other day.
and then that progress reflects early July. So we're likely, at the closeout of this project. It may already be closed out. I'd have to do some research on it, but yeah, we're wrapping this one up. So
Awesome. Thank you.
appreciate everybody's patience on that one. And then the next slide is a roundabout, and I'll say the south side of Wattville at the intersection of US 701 Business, Madison Street, and Lee Street / Franklin Street. That one's just kind of getting kicked off there at 15% completion. We have estimated completion later this year, so December 26. They're working to address those erosion control, drainage, and utility type work. And our next two slides really kind of consist of some of our, I'll call it, highway maintenance improvement type projects that deal with milling, resurfacing, pavement markings, some type of asphalt treatment, whether it's a preservation treatment or some kind of seal treatment. And then the last slide is just a list of some future projects to come to the area. So with that, I'll take any questions or my contact information.
Yes, I have a question. This is Amir Gary Keaton from the town of Sandyfield. Traveling north on 87 after you pass the overpass now, or the underpass, whichever you want to call it. There is no sign that tells anybody where to make a U-turn onto Woodyard Road. There's been all kinds of confusion there. I know where Woodyard Road is because I live on Woodyard Road, but someone trying to get to Freeman or to Burgall to make the U-turn at Woodyard Road to go back down to get on Highway 11, there's no sign there, and there's no sign that directs anyone to go down to Narrow Gap and make a U-turn. If you don't know where Narrow Gap is, if you don't know where Woodyard Road is, it can be very confusing, especially at night with all of those barrels out there. People don't know where to make the U-turn at. So it would be helpful if there was a sign indicating where Woodyard Road and where Narrow Gap Road roads are.
I've got that noted. Thank you, sir.
You can get it. His contact info is on the. You need to get it as well.
Okay. Thank you.
And we have a strange technical thing on the screen. So, Bill, can you still hear us?
Yes, sir.
Had some weird error message. I don't know what that was. Any other questions for Philip? If not, just one comment, that Niels Eddy one was an interesting one because one end of that road's in Columbus County and one end of it's in Brunswick County. So one end of it, the project was in Division 6, but it affected Division 3 because people had to come all the way around to get back to the other end to get in. So it required a lot of cooperation across jurisdictions as far as communication. And that's another reason that it's important for people to be at meetings like this, because we were able to talk to each other and make sure that things like the fire department in Northwest knew about that, so that if fire department in Delco couldn't get there, ours knew they were first response, things like that. So, well, thank you. Next up is transportation planning.
Hey everyone, this is Max Bezrichko with Transportation Planning Office. Couple of quick updates. First, Nazia Sarter, who normally does these updates, will be resigning due to some family reasons. But in the meantime, I'll be giving the updates for Cape Fear RPO. And then another quick update is we're changing the name of the department from Transportation Planning Division to Transportation Planning Office. And then in regards to Cape Fear, we're still working on the Pender County Comprehensive Transportation Plan. Currently, we're reviewing the draft report internally, but after that is done, we will be handing that off to the CTP Steering Committee. And after that, we can give it to public involvement. But other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Max?
I just want to say thanks, Max, for being here. But we've been fortunate to have Nazia for several years.
Yeah,
which will definitely be missed.
She's been here a long time. I don't really remember her not being on these.
For real, 11 years she was the coordinator for.
Oh, yeah, 13 now.
Yeah. So anyway, wanted to make sure that was stated, but again, thanks, Max. Max is gonna be
It's
filling
been
in.
my 11th year of being on the RPO and this, and she's always been there.
Yes.
It will be missed.
So, Max, welcome.
Thanks, everyone.
If no questions, move on to Integrated Mobility Division. Anyone there?
We got Campbell in the room.
Okay, right here in the room. Okay.
All right, I have a few updates. Some of this one here is some stuff that I've already mentioned previously, like the Safe Routes to Schools strategic plan and then the statewide active transportation plan. Those are both still underway. I don't really have any updates on those. They're both kind of just ongoing. I think the Safe Routes to School, there is currently a survey that's open. I believe, I don't know if y'all have ever received any emails about that, but that is closing today, actually. And then the statewide active transportation plan is still ongoing. I should have hopefully more updates on that soon. And the Bergall project acceleration plan is underway. We recently had the second steering committee meeting. So currently the consultant is going on and they've made the project prioritization list. So they're just ranking those top 5 projects and making cut sheets for those. And that'll be just an ongoing project. We'll have the steering committee meeting coming up sometime in the near future. And then the Surf City Bike and Ped plan is also underway. They recently just had their first steering committee meeting. So that one is getting underway. They're just kind of getting everything together from that first steering committee, then moving forward from there. And then for 2025, we have the on-demand microtransit annual report. So that recently just was published by NCDOT. That's kind of just giving an overview of all of the agencies that are operating microtransit across the state. That's going to have their operational statistics and their services through the FY 2025 here. So that's just kind of a good resource if any of you guys are interested in looking at their microtransit implementation across the state. And then I want to mention the concept grant awardees. I know that Columbus County back in June was awarded. They're involved in a concept grant award, which is just allowing them to work with other transit agencies to provide a regional transit option for folks. So those are kind of my new updates. Everything else is about the same where has already been covered.
Any questions?
If you don't mind, I wanted to add some context on that concept grant that Columbus County Transportation got. So I'm on their advisory board that met. We had our quarterly meeting just this past Monday. What that grant does is it authorizes Columbus County Transportation to work with Bladen County and operate kind of this subsection of their transit service through both counties to take people on transit trips out of county for free. So anybody in Bladen or Columbus County that needs to take the shuttle to an out of county location, so if they're coming from somewhere in Columbus County to Wilmington, that cost of that trip through this grant is fully covered. And so I think it's a really cool opportunity that Columbus County has to do that. And they're coordinating that for both residents of Columbus and Bladen counties. So I just want to make sure that people are aware of that. It doesn't change how it operates within the county, but for out of county trips, people can get rides for free through this grant.
Cool. Thank you. Any other questions for Campbell? If not, thank you. Do we have anybody from DOT board on?
We do not.
That completes our reports. We'll move on to open discussion. And I do have one thing. Moving forward in our minutes, if we can list the liaisons that are at the meeting or online, just so that we have a record that they're here. And also any alternates, even if they're not voting, just list them as being present so that there's a record of them being at the meeting and participating, even if they're not the voting member. I think that would be helpful. And can you send me a roster of the liaisons with contact info, please?
Yes.
An updated version of our roster with alternates, just so I'll have it.
Yes, I will do that.
And any other open discussion or comments from the board liaisons?
I have a question, and this has nothing to do with any particular projects, but maybe somebody in this room can kind of give me some direction as to who I need to talk to. But I had a resident, and I'll try to be very quick. We had DOT come out in our municipality, did some work on Woodyard Road about 4 or 5 weeks ago. They cleaned out some of the ditches. There was a gentleman right across the street from me, as a matter of fact, that after they cleaned out the ditches, they had to replace his driveway. They took the culvert up, put a new culvert in. So, of course, it's been very dry, but when it started raining, started washing the driveway away. And so this person wasn't able to get in and out of the driveway that DOT replaced. And so he called me asking for direction. I called the county. And they said, once DOT does work and they replace the driveway, when they leave, it's up to DOT standards. And if the driveway washes away, it's up to the individual to take care of it. And this driveway's been there for 40 years. It's functional, it's operational. You come in and do work and the rain washes it away and you tell the resident it's on you. Well, I was able to talk to someone after I got that information. Someone else called me and they this was on last Friday, as a matter of fact. They actually came out and took care of it on Monday. But they said that that's the state rule, the county rule, the DOT rule. So I don't know who makes those rules. I don't know. But if someone can kind of help me, I don't want to take up too much time here, but maybe you can point me in the direction of who we need to talk to when those kinds of things come up, because, you don't hear too much about that in Wilmington, but in rural communities like I live in and like I represent, sometimes people have questions like that. And so I was like, well, now I'm able to kind of, talk to folk about things like that. So, if somebody can kind of help me with that, that would be, much appreciated.
Sam, can you research that and get back with the mayor on that? And I had a similar situation in Northwest. It wasn't a DOT project that required the driveway to be taken up. It was a public utilities project, but then when DOT approved it, the property owner didn't know that they had even been out. So that was one of those things. I think that some level of communication with the property owner so that they can at least know that their property has been checked off, because they didn't know it till they were calling asking when it was going to be finished. And the project engineer said, well, they've signed, and everybody was pointing at somebody else, how that goes. And that's not a shot at DOT. They followed the rule they were given.
Right.
But we need to, we need to know what those rules are, because it can be confusing.
I'll look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Rebecca?
My question's about sort of multimodal transportation. We're looking at golf carts as a growing
Nuisance?
well, a growing mode of transportation in Southport. We last night changed what was on the books to 16-year-olds being able to drive a golf cart with a driver's license. And instead of just staying off to the right-hand side of the road, we now have a new ordinance where golf carts need to pull over and allow cars to pass when it is safe to do so. My question is there, Howe Street is a state road. Is there a way to plan for that kind of golf cart transportation going forward? I know that we're looking at the sidewalk still, but when we're looking at the number of golf carts that we're seeing in Southport now, both from permanent residents and people renting them, it becomes a safety issue if we're not looking forward as to how they will be integrated into that road in the future. Is there a way to do that, to look at that, to have somebody come study it? Is there guidance someone can give me?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I will check.
Thank you.
Any other open discussion? Going once, going twice. If not, we will adjourn the meeting. I know there's another group in here in 10 minutes. So we're right on time. So